Fine. So my name's Luke Sidwell. I've been a teacher now for going into my 6th year now, which is crazy to think about. And I teach at Uckfield College, which is a large comprehensive mixed school in East Sussex. So realistically, my goals kind of coming into teaching, I finished my degree. I did a degree in sports coaching and physical education, which kind of enabled me to decipher as I went through my degree, actually, whether I wanted to focus on a more elite coaching route within sport or whether I wanted to turn my attention to the education side of things. Following the completion of my degree, I took 2 years working as a teacher's assistant in a school local to the Brighton Hove area where I live, and sort of took the 2 years to really kind of work out, is this what I want to do? Following those 2 years, thankfully, the answer was yes. I do want to be a teacher, and I trained through school-centred initial teacher training through something called the South Downs Skit, and that enabled me to be placed in a very successful, outstanding school in West Sussex, to which I did my training. I then moved up to London for 2 years and worked in inner city London boys' school in Croydon, and spent 2 years there. My NQT year, well, in new money, ECT year, +1, and then moved down to Sussex to complete the further 3 years, to which brings me up to where I am now. I think for me, I was very fortunate to have a very positive experience of school life throughout the way through primary, secondary, and into further education post-16 and university. And I think over that time, I just developed a real love for learning and developing and ensuring that kind of every day is different and moving forwards. And you can always take something from every day, be it whilst in the educational as a student and then to come into it as a teacher as well. I just think it's such an ever-changing environment. And for me, it was something where, given the positive experience I had, I always felt that working with children, especially of the 11 to 18 age range, was something that I wanted to do, purely based on the fact that, as I said previously, it's just such an ever-changing environment. It's every day is different. You're constantly reflecting on how you are as a practitioner. I think it's one of those lines of work where you're constantly challenged to reflect and think about how you can be better. It's not just to go into work each day, do the same thing the same way. You're constantly thinking about how you can reflect and be better at what you do. And every day enables you to experience new challenges, some which are incredibly difficult, others of which enable you to learn a great deal from them. So I think for me, the main reason why I wanted to be a teacher was just my pure love for learning, which I developed from such a young age, and to be able to continue that and to inspire others to continue their love for learning is something that I've, wanted to do for a long time, and something I still enjoy doing to this day, even 6 years in. So I didn't know a great deal about the Chartered College of Teaching, purely just throughout my own experiences. Hadn't really heard too much about it, didn't really know a great deal about the amazing work that the Chartered College do. So when I started at Uckfield College, I was introduced to the programme in my first year. My first year was largely interrupted, due to COVID. So during the time in my first year, my assistant principal, who's now head of school at the school, said to me, this looks like a really good programme for you, and we think it'd be something that you'd be fantastic at if you were interested. And for me, as I've said previously, I always want to be learning new things and developing as a practitioner. And what the Chartered College enabled me to do was, when I started delving a bit deeper into the work that the Chartered College does, was recognising outstanding practitioners in the fields that they work in. And again, sort of back to that self-reflection and how much the programme allows you to reflect on what it is you're doing and develop it. And I think to be able to have the opportunity, whilst no longer training in school, but now having already completed my NQT year moving forward, I think sometimes you can feel that CPD offered in school is fantastic, but where is it actually heading in terms of what am I working towards? And for the Chartered College, so many numerous qualifications that you offer at the Chartered College, it was really interesting for me. Well, almost embarrassing. I hadn't heard of it previously in 5 years, to then get to the point where I was like, well, this is fantastic. How have I not heard more about this? And I feel very fortunate that my school drew my attention to the Chartered College. And the minute I started reading about it and delving deeper and speaking to people that had previously completed qualifications through the Chartered College, it became quite clear to me quite quickly that it was something I wanted to be a part of. So that's a really difficult question, because there were so many parts of it when I was thinking about it earlier, prior to our conversation about all the things I did. It was actually quite amazing to put it all together and think, wow, we did so much in such a long period of time. And my mind always draws right back to the start when I started the programme, and we heard from subject specialists in different areas of research, specifically the cognitive science side of things. and how students learn, and to be able to hear from really, qualified, developed, highly thought of people within teaching and within literature, for them to be able to deliver to us as candidates, and for us to be able to have the opportunity to ask them questions and listen to them one-on-one. I mean, it was just the most beneficial element of CPD I probably have experienced, because it was almost like having a guest speaker once a week for 3 weeks, and just being able to delve into these conversations and really at the start really quite broad and have so many different aspects of pedagogy delivered by areas of, members of teaching staff who have, previous staff as well, who have specifically focused on that one area and done so much research into it. And to be able to hear such evidence-informed conversations and to hear what they've done in school was such a massive part of the program, and it was right at the start. So I think that really set the tone as to, we are dealing with people who are at the top of their game in those different fields. Here's what they can help you understand before you decide what makes you tick and what you want to work on. And I liked how it started so broad in terms of the different people who spoke to us, and every single one of them was fantastic. Specifically for me, the cognitive science element was the most beneficial, and was something I'm still focused on now, because I was so inspired by what I heard. It was just a completely different way of thinking. And I was straight into school the next week saying, this was fantastic. I heard this, I learned this, and the school were already benefiting from the outset about what we'd learned in such a short space of time. So I think the start, particularly how strong it started in terms of introducing us quite quickly to, areas of expertise and subject specialists, was a really positive way to kick things off, and really did set the tone throughout the rest of the program. So I think ultimately what the Chartered College program does, the CTE qualification does, is it just promotes that element of self-reflection. So I know I've said it previous, but I do strongly believe that it was something I wasn't doing enough before I began the program, which is why I'm speaking. So it seems like I'm speaking quite a lot about it, because for me, the biggest thing I could draw upon was the challenge of thinking about, why am I delivering what I'm delivering, and why am I doing it this specific way? So really it was finding my why, and in terms of my teaching. So I'm going to teach it this way because, and I'm going to try this technique with this group because. And I think it was just a constant challenging of, I'm not just doing this because it's the easiest way of doing it, or I'm not just doing this because I think it's right. It's actually, what does the research suggest, and the thinking around that, and actually taking a moment to go, that didn't go so well. What were the elements about how I've delivered that lesson that didn't go so well, and where is the research on it to help me understand a little bit more about what I could do better? So I think ultimately the short answer would be massively more amounts of self-reflection. And I think the major impact of that is encouraging yourself to take time in the week to actually reflect upon what you've delivered. Because I think as teaching staff, in particular in the modern education system, there really isn't much time built into an average timetable to take a moment after each lesson and reflect upon it. So I think having that time in the week where you can go, and that's what the Chartered College program enables you to do, because whilst you're reflecting on your think piece and everything that you're working towards, you're constantly thinking back to, how has that impacted my further professional development? And that's where, the program notes and everything that you set out the goals at the start, and tracking that through my PD and consistently thinking back to those goals that you set at the start and how each week is contributing to that. So I think self-reflection would be the biggest thing that I've discovered is most beneficial within my teaching, having begun and completed the program. So it's always a difficult one to anticipate, isn't it? Because obviously no one really knows where the future's going to take them. But at the same time, I think for me, what it has done is, on a whole school scale, I think it's probably a good opportunity to speak about my subject, because I think physical education, having been, I don't know how many candidates on the program were from a physical education background, but having been a physical education teacher and completed it, I don't think it's always commonly assumed that PE is a subject that lends itself to this line of inquiry in terms of Chartered College and the real kind of deep pedagogical thinking and aspects of that. So I think what it has done for me is really enhanced my subject knowledge in terms of how everything we learn as practitioners is applicable regardless of the subject, regardless what background you come from or whatever schooling environment you're in. There's always research out there that can benefit you. And I was just so surprised at the amount of research out there in terms of how this can contribute specifically to PE. Now, not just in a theoretical setting, in the practical environment outside with a group. So I think for me, where it takes me next is actually myself continuing the research and focusing and starting to use what I've learned from the Chartered College C Teach Award and actually combining it with my subject and starting to think about some specific research I can be conducting into my own field, perhaps even within the district that we work in. I'm fortunate to have a cluster of schools of which we work with within the Wealden, which is where my school is based. What I'd really like to do is get together amongst subject leads and say, I want to focus this bit of research on this part of PE, and here's what I've done so far to basically put me in a position where I think it's applicable, and here's what I want to do next. And I think the next thing would be just to continue that real zest for research is what I would like to do, because it's something that I don't just want to put down, because there's so much out there, and even the C teachers have incredibly broad and deep level of thinking is required to complete it. But rather than just park that now and go on to something else, I think it's really important to continue that, and how I can impact it on more of a kind of county scale or even within a group of schools, and a bit more research, more action research that I can present to SLT or to other schools would be where I would like to take the qualification next, because I think it gives me that ability to do so, having completed the award, to say, well, I know what I'm talking about when it comes to research, and I know how to research and what to do in terms of presenting data and how to do that. So I'd now like to take that and see how I can impact a group of schools, or even on a larger scale. PE, county-wide would be excellent, but the sky's the limit when it comes to it. But it's just about where to start that and where to begin. So I would say, hopefully, continue the research on into a cluster of schools and see how I can benefit PE and some high-quality teaching. I think CPD is the most important part of teaching, because it's so easy to fall into a trap of the day-to-day, and this is how I'm going to teach something a certain way. I mean, over the years, we all know that one teacher that's taught the same lesson the same way over and over again, and isn't willing to be flexible and actually think about or reflect on what it is and how they could deliver that better. And I think as we move through education, and nowadays it's a lot more of a common hot topic where schools are looking at what they can do to develop teachers a lot more, and the buy-in is there from teachers. And I think the most important thing is that CPD enables us to get better, not just as practitioners, but also with our classroom management, with our subject knowledge. And I think what ultimately comes from CPD is the opportunity to just take something new, try something new, or develop something you're already doing in a different way. Because what's really important, again, I'll go back to that building buy-in, is all teachers in some way, whether you've been teaching for 60 years or 6, all teachers need to have a moment where they think, could this be done a certain way? As education changes and moves forward with the times, there's so much more out there. And I think what's important, especially within schools and CPD, is to value that, and for staff to have the opportunity to actually take part in that CPD, and not only take part in a CPD session, go to an hour workshop on a Monday and go, that's it, I'm done. Not just view it as a box ticking exercise, but actually, once you've done that CPD, have the time to implement it, then come back together and reflect upon it. So I think that's where CPD is going. And I think definitely within my school, 100% within my school, we really buy into it. And hence why I completed the program. So I think CPD and the development of all colleagues is important. And also, not, as I've said previously, not just to go and do it because you think it's right to do it, because obviously we all know development is important, but also to take something, have a clear, pathway in your mind about how you want to develop something and take it forward. So I think all teachers should value it. I certainly do, because it really does enable that level of self-reflection and just general improvement, because ultimately we're all trying to improve, because we all want the best results for the students, and we all want to create a learning environment that's beneficial to us and to the kids. So I think CPD, as I say, is the most important tool for a school, I think, that they have or that they possess personally. I would sum it up. It's very difficult to do, but I would sum up my experience on the Chartered College C Teach program. One sentence would be a thought-provoking and deeply, I'd say, engaging program that has enabled me to develop as a practitioner. I would recommend the Chartered College to friends and colleagues. I have already recommended the Chartered College to friends and colleagues because I found it a really rewarding, thought-provoking experience, which has enabled me wholeheartedly to become a better teacher. So for me, it would be something I would always recommend throughout my teaching career, and definitely something I want to remain a part of, having completed C-Teach and continue my development throughout the programme.